welcome to Face to Face Live Talk Show. We have Dr. M.S. Cover from Apollo Hospital, one of the best hospital in India. Hello, Dr. Cover. How are you?
Hi Rashmi, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much, Doctor. When you come on our show, everybody is so happy that हमें कुछ information मिलेगी. Doctor Saab is coming on our show, and thank you
Thank,
for supporting all the time to our viewers because it has been a great support. आपने जो हमें बताया how to be precautious, it has been really great benefit for all our viewers. Thank you so much.
thanks for calling me to your show again. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So again, a big thank you to you before we start. And again, I would like to ask that there's a lot of controversies about the origin and spread of the disease. I would like to have some information about that.
Well, this is a point of controversy at the moment, how the disease started.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know where it started from in Wuhan,
Mm-hmm.
the capital of the Hubei province in southern China. The issue is whether it started from the wet market or it was a leak from the Wuhan lab, which is their virology lab, virology institute there, which is very close to the wet markets. Now, what is happening in the wet markets there? They have exotic animals, the wild animals,
Right.
which are stacked in boxes, one above the other, and they slaughter them there, and they get mixed up also.
Okay.
And this is then sold off. Uh, but the, the there have been a lot of theories whether there has been jumping of the virus from one species, from one animal to another, or it has come from the bats.
Okay.
Uh, I was looking at the Chinese bloggers, and they they denied that there are any bats sold in the market. They said we don't eat or drink bat soup or eat bat meat,
Okay.
though they do, of course, sell dogs, cats, snakes, lizards, and a whole lot of other things which you wouldn't even hear about, pangolins. So, but they thought that they do not sell bat meat there, so they are not used to bat soups, which has been talked about. So where has the virus come from? Now, the studies on bats is done in the virology lab. If it has leaked from the virology lab, then that is a huge controversy because that would put a blame squarely on the Chinese authorities for not having taken enough precautions, and the safety measures were not enough. In 2009, there was a report from the University of Hong Kong where they said that it's a time bomb. The way the wet markets work there in China, they're like time bomb, and they would lead to some a big epidemic someday.
Mm-hmm.
Similar was the thought of a U.S. A group of embassy officials
Okay.
who visited this area, this virology lab also, and they thought they didn't have enough security there, so they obviously had a lot of security concerns about this virology lab. Now, the whole thing has, for your surprise, restarted from 30th of March.
Mm-hmm.
That means about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
They have reopened those wet markets after closing them down for something like 75 days. Um, and the world is fighting the virus. The world is struggling with the virus.
Yeah.
They are struggling with their mortalities and morbidities. And it's a shocking surprise why the wet markets should open up again at this juncture. Well, they may say that it is a question of livelihood of hundreds of thousands of people, but is this the right time, or is there something else? Now, if the bats were not being sold there, the bats are being seen there now. The only difference probably now is that there were no bats earlier, but there are bats now. And the other difference is that now the security guards are everywhere there, and they are not letting anybody take a photograph of the markets. So how
Oh,
things are functioning there, it's kind of very much controlled by the authorities there, and you know, you kind of develop suspicion over these things, where the virus has come from. So they didn't even allow, the Chinese didn't allow the American authorities to send a delegation to do an investigation as to where the virus originated from. There must be a reason that they declined to give them permission. Uh, if they had been more transparent, there wouldn't have been so much of controversy. But then there are certain things which you will never know about the Chinese. So there is a huge controversy, and hopefully the time will clarify, because there are lots of lawsuits being a kind of planned and put forward in various countries, especially in the U.S. They have already done that against the Chinese for the kind of economic meltdown that has happened all over the world, and the people who have lost their lives, and those who have suffered in the hospitals. So it's a massive, massive damage that has happened. If there is somebody who can be held responsible for, even if it is not a lab generated virus, even if it is just a leak from a facility which you are supposed to protect, well, if that is responsible, then the finger would fairly and squarely uh, point towards Chinese authorities.
absolutely right.
So that is how the virus started, and it spread in no time globally. Initially to South Korea, Japan, then Iran, uh, Italy, then Spain, USA at the same time, Germany, Britain, everywhere, India, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, Russia, everywhere. But right now, it seems that by opening the wet markets, the Chinese are saying, well, it is not our problem anymore, it is someone else's problem. We are okay, and we can go ahead with our celebrations. This is not fair.
Not fair at all. Of course, you're absolutely right. This is not making any sense. Yeah, of course. There have to be, like, it's with everyone, and you have to be caring for everybody's lives, that is very, very important.
Yeah,
And so many
yeah,
deaths have been happened. It's very sad because they have relations, like, किसी के father है, किसी का mother है, or doctors are facing a lot of problem. They have to put their life in danger going to hospitals. They
yeah,
cannot stop going there. And a lot of
yeah.
people, like, everybody is doing their work with dedication. So it's really very bad and very sad. And
Sorry.
hopefully we are just praying to God things should be fine, and let's see how things work out. So I would like to know about the controversy about the role of WHO. Can you give some limelight on that also?
It's a day of controversies. Okay. The well, we all know. In fact, I had a TV interview here in Delhi.
Okay.
That was on 6th of February, and they were these were the early days. Uh, the virus hadn't yet reached the U.S. Shores by that time, and I remember having said in that talk that WHO was late by about 3 weeks in, first of all, not acknowledging that this was a human to human transmission of the virus. Secondly, they were late by about 3 weeks in declaring COVID 19 as a pandemic. Because when you declare a disease as pandemic, then automatically a lot of things happen. The various governments, nations, they have to take certain steps. For example, the flights and so many things happen. They automatically come into play. We feel that they were late by about 3 weeks, and that made a whole lot of difference,
Yes.
because that could have saved a whole lot of lives. In fact, there was a study from Southampton in UK. a statistical study by one of the authors who said that if the WHO had informed the world by December end about the pandemic, and by December end, it was very clear that there was a human to human transmission. And if some steps were taken aggressively at that time, there could have been 95% less number of deaths and 95% less damage to the economy. Now, this makes a huge statement. Even if we were late by a couple of weeks from 30th December date, 31st December date, we could have still saved maybe 70-80% of what we have lost.
Of course.
So this is a huge human cost as well as economic cost, and WHO was fairly and squarely blamed for that. And this WHO director Tedros has been pro-Chinese. In fact, in his statements also, he was pro-Chinese. In fact, he said that when there was already human-to-human transmission, there were data coming even from within China that they were seeing cases which had nothing to do with the wet market, and they were reporting those cases. WHO even at that time insisted that there is no human-to-human transmission. So that 3 weeks lag was, I think, a huge setback if you look back and see what you could have gained, what you could have probably not lost. You see, WHO has not been in controversy for the first time. There have been a lot of things. They have been like pro-vaccination. I remember in the times of H1N1, they were very keen to pronounce that this is a pandemic. When doctors around the world, the virologists around the world thought that we were probably jumping the gun. We could have probably waited, but they wanted a vaccine to be promoted against H1N1, so they were too keen to go ahead. I mean, they were again in a lot of controversy at that time, and which people later on thought they couldn't justify. So WHO has been in controversy a lot of times, and who is behind the vaccination programs? All those things. So let's not talk about that. That is a
Of course.
different
So
subject
let's come
altogether.
down to the lockdown. As you told me in the last show that of course ये बढ़ेगा, and it did happen. What you told me कि lockdown का time बढ़ गया India में, and I think so that's a wise
Yeah.
decision. That's what I feel as a just a normal human being. I don't have more knowledge about this line. So आप क्या सोचते हैं डॉक्टर साहब? Like
You see, lockdown करना तो easy था,
जी,
लेकिन अनलॉक करना उतना इजी नहीं है.
absolutely.
और इसमें बहुत फैक्टर्स हैं. सबसे पहले आपको ये देखना पड़ता है कि कौन से हॉट स्पॉट्स हैं.
जी,
Some states are doing that, and my own personal feeling is that like some states are already notifying like that,
yeah,
that they have a red zone, they have a green zone, and they have a yellow zone.
yeah.
Red, orange, and green.
Mm-hmm.
So red spot is where there are many clusters. So that is supposed to be a red zone. Orange zone is where there are probably some clusters of positive cases. Green zone is where there is no new case. If there were some, they have been treated completely. No new cases are arising, and there are no clusters. Now, in those areas which are green zones, means which are safe zones,
Yeah.
so there can be movement within that, and offices or the industry should start, because you cannot have this lockdown endlessly. Economy is suffering all
Of
over
course, yes.
globally,
Of course, yes. Yeah.
and you have to unlock these shackles on the economy. Uh, there are about half the districts in India, something like 350 districts out of, I think, 720 districts in India, which are in green zone.
Yeah.
So what stops you from allowing activity within those areas? Of course, with social distancing and proper hygiene, hand hygiene, and other precautions that are being advised all the time in place. And there should be actually even uh, uh, kind of uh, I would presume in the industries, in the factories, there should be supervision and there could be video recording also in case certain people, certain pockets are not following those social norms. Otherwise, there could be problem again emanating in those so-called green areas, which even if there is a one single positive case, can again start the chain, and you could have to go back stepping. Uh, the first of the few things that was allowed, rightly so, was the harvesting and harvesting related movement, because we are at this time in the Rabi times, the cutting of crop and thereafter the sowing of the next Kharif crop in India. So that is, it was quite logical that you had to give liberty to the farmers as well as the laborers to go ahead with all their movements and within this, but keeping the social distancing norms in place. Coming to the other activities which in green zones is very essential is construction activity, factories, micro, medium, and small enterprises, what we call uh, MSMEs. So they have to be restarted again in green zones. You could probably allow half the attendees, the workers, to come on one day and alternate with the other half, so that you could maintain distance in the offices. The government offices, they have to be reopened, and so are the corporates. So they are gradually, allowing these establishments to start. But coming to the malls, the retail, the big retail, the malls, the cinemas, for example, the sporting activities, theater, I don't see them opening for the next at least a month or two. I don't think that is going to happen. Uh, the flights, I think the flights, domestic flights, may be opened by something like 15th of May, but international flights, they will probably have to be selected, and that too probably would take a little longer, not before June, I think. So, it's a selective unlocking, and that too from place to place it will be different. And those areas which are red zones, I don't see them starting any activity for probably another month or so. Coming to trains, for example, the free trains are in operation from the beginning. They didn't stop, but the passenger trains, I think, would probably take another month or so, and that too they'll have to figure out that they cannot be allowed to be overcrowded. So is the case of the buses. Coming to e-commerce, you know, e-commerce would always compete with the small retailers. So if you allow e-commerce, don't allow small retailers, then there is going to be a lot of a non-level playing field against the retailers. So I believe that they would probably take a single decision about the opening up of the small traders, retailers, as well as the e-commerce. Call centers is another segment where which we thought shouldn't have closed down, or should have at least continued working, maybe at one third of the strength or half the strength, with all the social precautions in place, because they are serving the interests of our businesses in USA. So if the call center is the back office for the companies in USA, and you close them down for as a part of the lockdown, then you are spoiling your relations with those companies
Yeah.
and also affecting them. Software industry probably would again be given green signal soon enough, but again with the social distancing norms in place. So these are the things which we see happening in partial lockdown or when the lockdown starts open. But they will be very vigilant about the contact tracing and segregating or isolating those individuals who are positive so that they don't infect others, and then marking those areas as the hot spots. So it is a much tougher job than people thought, and certainly locking down is so much easier than
I know we have
unlocking.
so many calls in our studio, and people are asking me so many questions, but I'll take them before when we
Please,
finish our
yeah.
conversation. But we have one of our clients. She has sent a news to us that please ask Dr. Saab what does it mean. It's saying WHO की वार्निंग, विश्व स्वास्थ्य संगठन ने कहा कोरोना का सबसे बुरा दौर आना बाकी, क्योंकि सिर्फ 3% लोगों में वायरस के प्रति इम्यूनिटी. So
Yeah, yeah. The WHO has been talking about that even today.
yeah.
That the worst is not over yet. Uh, you see, the immunity among people is going to develop very slowly until we get a vaccine. So until the vaccine is made and available to the public. By the way, there are 17 companies involved in vaccination production at this time. Six of them are Indian companies, and India is world leader in producing vaccines.
Yeah.
So they are in a race. All of them are in a race because until you vaccinate the entire population of the world, you cannot really have a general immunity. And until that time, even if your major spurt goes away, you still will be having sporadic cases, and they would be as serious as the disease is at the moment. Uh, Without vaccine, this whole disease is going to span out for a much longer period. Coming to the herd immunity without vaccination, uh, it is it is going to take a long time. Secondly, while developing herd immunity, those who will not be able to handle means about 2 to 3 or 4% people will die because of the disease because they just do not have the immunity to this virus. It's a new virus.
Oh my God, it's really still very scary. Like people are really scared, and जिनके घर में जो like family members क्योर होके भी आ गए, but still they are kind of scared, and एक दहशत सी मन में बैठ गई है कि वापस
Yeah,
से नहीं हो
you
जाएगा.
see,
You know,
the indication from different countries is a little different figure. Like Spain and Italy, those who were infected, 9 to 11% did not survive. In USA, the figures are much more favorable. In India, uh, there are 3.2% is the death rate among those people who are infected with the virus.
one of our viewers has called. She was watching the show. She's saying that recently she came to know कि इसका कोई symptom नहीं होता है, but तो मतलब stress ही इतना बढ़ता जा रहा है. She's saying like हमें लगता है कहीं ऐसा तो नहीं we are suffering through from COVID and we are not aware of. So what to do in that case?
That
Like
is a that is actually a big worry. Uh, about 80% of the individuals will have very mild symptoms, and it is now well known that the patient can be infected even 2, 3 to even 4 days prior to developing symptoms,
oh,
which is not a good sign. Unlike the disease SARS, which came with an announcement that I've come, because it would go straight into the lungs, cause a lot of symptoms, to cause havoc.
Yeah.
Now, that was what was happening during SARS disease, which is again one of the corona viruses. But in this virus, COVID 19, the symptoms can be very insidious or can be non existent, and the patient could be is spreader of the infection. So that is the worry. That is a big advantage that this virus carries for itself. But we just have to be careful. The moment we develop symptoms, we should be taking all the precautions and getting ourselves tested and start, using all those precautions. The mask and other things. These days, we are advising masks to everybody.
Yeah, we
Everybody,
just
whether
got
you
a
have
call recently for that only in our studio that they are asking that do we have to wear mask for a year or how's it going to work out?
Uh, at this time, yes, it is a general advice. We used to see Japanese and people uh, in Asian countries, in Far East Asian countries, using masks even during those days when there was no epidemic or pandemic,
Yeah.
nothing.
Yes.
But we thought that if somebody in Delhi or in New York or in London at the airport, walks around with a mask, you would be thinking, is he crazy? Or he is having some infection? So he is, kind of being very sort of watchful about that. But now, if you do not have a mask, you will be questioned. In fact, it is an offense in Delhi to be without a mask on the road. People have been fined now for not wearing a mask, but I don't see anybody without a mask these days.
That is very nice, actually. And if the more they follow the precautions, safety precautions, it's good for them only, of course, yes. And it's everybody will have to come forward and follow all the rules and regulation. Then only we can fight with this situation because it's really worrisome, of course, yes. So I would
Absolutely.
like to know, like, how are you treating your COVID patients there, doctor?
It is a tough job. If the patient is just found to be positive, we admit him. If we admit him, we isolate him. It's not in that area. It's in that area where there is just nobody else except the positive COVID cases. As long as the patient is just having fever or some cough, we are fine. We just give symptomatic treatment. We do start in those cases HCQS, hydroxychloroquine, as well as azithromycin. This combination we start in those cases too. Um, but once the case develops more symptoms, and not just a little bit of oxygen, but the oxygen requirement is going up, then we first of all increase the oxygen. Then we also give them what we call high flow nasal cannula. This is a mechanism by which we can jack up the oxygen concentration to about 60%, even higher. So that is what is a supportive treatment. But once the oxygen requirement goes up and the patient is not looking all that good, then we almost always start them on anticoagulants also, because we know in this disease there is hypercoagulable state in the pulmonary circulation, in the blood vessels of the lungs. There is clotting formation, which can be lethal in these cases. So we start giving them, of course, we measure the levels of D dimers and other things to see the inflammation that is going on indirectly by measuring the IL-6 and CRPs. And if the D dimer is going up, goes below higher than 1,000, then we increase the dose of anticoagulant to double the dose from once a day to twice a day. So this is one thing that we do, and we also give them anti-inflammatories in the form of steroids, and especially we we think that timing of the steroids is very important. If we time them before a full-blown cascade of cytokine storm develops and causes the patient to go into an ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndrome, in which the patient may need to go into the ventilator, then we have lost the chance of stopping that cytokine storm in its tracks. So we are quite cautious so when to give the patient steroids. And we are also looking at those drugs which are experimental. We are waiting for their availability. Remdesivir is one of them. It is an intravenous drug which is given over 10 days, but it's not available with us yet so far. There is an oral substitute of this which can be tried, but we are still waiting for. It's not available in the world yet. But these are the drugs which can be, which are already available, but I mean, nobody thought they would be required in very large amounts. And the trials in COVID-19 are still going. They have proven their efficacy in Ebola, in SARS, in MERS. They have proven their value there. But in COVID-19, we don't have that yet. But we are hoping to achieve something once the results come through. And the results probably would start, they are coming on a daily basis, but they are small anecdotal reports. We want the larger trials. There's one large trial under WHO which is which has just been started. Another large trial is going on in Europe. So we are waiting for the results. It will take some time. Another drug therapy, which is plasma, from the already treated cases, which is called convalescent plasma.
Yeah.
So that from a patient who's recovered from a COVID-19 infection, we take the blood out of that, 400 cc, and 200 cc can be given to one patient, 200 cc can be given to another patient. Of course, you have to match, do the ABO grouping and matching. And of course, we also see whether that patient from whom you are drawing the blood, he should not be suffering from certain diseases which can be transmitted through the blood. And HIV is one of them. And hepatitis is another one. So those things are taken care. And if the patient is okay, then the sample can be taken even second time. After a few weeks, after 3 weeks, you can take another 400 cc from that patient if it is required. So one person can actually serve 4 new patients. So
Doctor, we
this is,
have a caller from Spain. I'll take her call. Um, hello.
yeah.
Yeah, you're on live and you can talk directly to a doctor. Yeah, you can ask your question.
Okay, doctor, good evening. I have
Good
a
evening.
question for you.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, he can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, see, I'm from Spain, okay? And on
Yeah.
1st of March, I was admitted to the hospital, okay? And they did
Yeah.
well, I was really bad and they thought I have pneumonia or something. So on the 3rd, they discharged me saying I have nothing. So I was really sick, very bad. But they said I have nothing and they gave me some medicine, Agila or something they gave me. And they said total bed rest. And on 6th, I had to start to work. And on the 8th we had a sandstorm, तो उससे मुझे फिर से lungs में problem होना शुरू हो गया. After that, I was only unwell and I had all the symptoms of COVID. Okay, so I called them and I said I feel like that. I was not breathless. ठीक है, I only had lungs infection. मुझे bronchitis जैसे हो गया था and मुझे बुखार आ रहा था जा रहा था. And I was like, I was telling them, मुझे कुछ है, please कुछ करो, मुझे कुछ है, because I was like weak, मुझे उठा नहीं जा रहा था. But every time they would say कि हमारे पास टेस्ट नहीं पहुंचे हैं, हमारे पास टेस्ट नहीं पहुंचे हैं. So what I did was, I myself I isolated, okay, मैं रूम में रह गई. and I started following the hot water thing. So I started doing all the home remedies. मैंने steaming start कर दिया, ये कर दिया, वो कर दिया, and in 22 days I was cured. Cured in a sense कि मेरा खांसी चला गया, मुझे अभी कोई तकलीफ नहीं है. But every day they would call me to follow it up कि मैं कैसी हूँ. लेकिन उन्होंने कुछ किया नहीं है. So मुझे अभी भी ऐसा लगता है कि ऐसा नहीं मेरे अंदर अभी भी कुछ है.
You said it was 1st of March. So it's already about 7 weeks now. So your disease would have gone by now anyway. I think when they sent you back, it's not that you had already been cured so fast. The symptoms go on for a few weeks, 2-3 weeks easily, and they must have given you some treatment, but I don't anticipate that the way you described that you felt better and then there was a sandstorm, subsequently you felt worse again. Your disease never went away. It doesn't go away so fast. And if you were bad enough that they had to admit you and then discharge you, that means all this while you were having the disease, which your body, by your own immunity, has kind of overcome the disease. Now, normally we would expect the disease or the virus to disappear from the body in a couple of weeks, and by 1 month or 28 days time, we anticipate that the body is free of the virus in those patients who are to recover. And 80% of the patients in any case have milder symptoms, and another 5 to 7% patients, they have their moderate symptoms, but they don't require hospitalization. They do require, of course, a consultation and treatment, but they do not require hospitalization. And the hospitalization is actually required in more sick patients in about 10 to 15% cases. And out of that, only about 5% end up in the ICU. So that is how the history is. So I think you were a mild to moderate case, which recovered over time by your own immunity. So now I must congratulate you that you're doing well now. Whether they tested you for COVID or not, I don't know. But from your history, it seems that you did have COVID infection, and especially in Spain, where the infection.
Sorry.
Yeah, where the infection rate in Spain has been so high that from your description, from your symptoms, you did overcome the disease through your own immunity. I don't think your steaming or your gargles or any home remedies would have helped you. It would have probably gone away on its own gradually the way it did.
The thing is, doctor, I was listening to your show and I just heard you said if you have any symptoms, get yourself checked. Okay? But I'm telling you, I being in Spain where the rate is so high, trust me, every day they would call me to ask me how I was, but nobody bothered to come and take a test or see, because there were days I couldn't breathe. I mean, I couldn't talk. I had to tell my family, phone rakh, main baat nahi kar sakti.
I would presume the fact that they were checking on you daily is because they suspected that you had COVID. Maybe they didn't have those testing kits at that time. That must be the reason that they didn't test you, but they kept a close watch on you. In case you had worsened clinically, then they would have got you back into the hospital again.
Okay, so the doctor, they stopped calling. You know why? They said because I was isolated. They told me, okay, for 2 weeks you're not going out. So they called me. They said today your 2 weeks isolation is over. And after that, I think they just called once. After that, they just completely stopped calling. Well, by God's grace,
because they knew the storm is over. So they stopped calling you. They had other patients to call. Yeah.
Thank you so much,
You know what?
doctor, for your time.
Let me tell you. In the United Kingdom, they they told very clearly to the patients that if you have cough, if you have fever, don't call us. Don't come to us. Don't even call
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
But isolate yourself. And only if your symptoms become more severe, or you develop breathlessness, if any of these two things happen, then you come to us. So this was the NHS policy, National Health Service policy in the United Kingdom.
Okay. Here also we were told not to go to the hospital. Just keep calling 112, and I was calling them. Okay. Now, just
Yeah.
I won't take much of your time, but I would like to tell you and everyone that honestly, I treated myself. I had those infusions, hot water, steaming, everything possible I did because I was so scared to be admitted in the hospital. So I knew that once you go to the hospital, maybe you don't come out. So I treated myself, and with my family's blessings and their prayers,
Don't
I'm
think like
okay.
don't think like that. There are only a few patients we are not able to save, but most of our COVID positive patients from our isolation wards or even from our ICU, they are going back home. We are discharging.
Yeah.
We discharged even 3 cases today.
Wow, that's so
Cool.
nice.
Thank you
So we
so
have to
much,
be
Rashmi ji.
positive.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you so
doctor.
much. Thank you so much for your call. Thanks.
You're welcome.
And stay safe, stay home. Thank you. So today we had so many calls actually, and we are not able to because the show time is short. But next time, maybe I'm thinking we'll take few calls and we will make them talk to you because they want to talk to you directly, and they are like so
Yeah,
many questions during the show, and I'm like,
yeah,
should I
sure.
talk and
Yeah, yeah.
how? And because I want them also to get the opportunity to talk to you. So from next time we'll make this thing that they can talk directly with you. Maybe they can call on Skype, my dream silver, or on 732791656. We'll make sure and they can talk directly. And if they have any questions, so Dr. Kanwar is always there to help us. Thank you so much, doctor. And stay safe, stay
Thank you,
home,
Rashmi.
and thank you so much for your time. But before we end the show, any message for our viewers, doctor?
Well, maintain social distancing and use mask and don't touch your face, nose, mouth. Try to avoid as much as possible. Keep washing your hands several times in a day for at least 20 seconds, or use hand sanitizers frequently. Stay positive. Remember, in 80% of the cases, you may not have any symptoms or very mild symptoms. You may even ignore that, but do not ignore that. If you have those symptoms, even very mild, isolate yourself. Even if you don't get yourself tested, isolate yourself. This is very important. And continue with the good nutritious diet. Just keep, and while you're at home, if you're locked down, then continue with some kind of exercises at home.
Thank you so much, doctor. Thank you. It was great and so much of information for all of our viewers. On behalf of all of our viewers, I would like to again thank you for taking your time and being part of our show. Thank you so much. Thanks a ton and
Thank you
stay
so much,
safe.
Rashmi. Thank you.
I cannot tell you to
Thank
stay home. Of course, you are treating the patients, but please stay safe. And you know you are very precious for our viewers
you.
and
Yeah,
for us, of course,
I'm
and
starting. I'm
everyone in the
starting
world.
my. I'm starting my COVID ICU and COVID isolation ward duty after 2 days from Thursday for 1 week, and then I'll be out for a week. Then for another week again, I'll be inside. That is a dreaded area, but I think we got to be courageous
No,
to
our good
handle
wishes and prayers
situations.
are always with everyone. Thank you so much, doctor. Thank you for being
Thank you,
part of the
Rashmi.
show.
Thank you. Bye
Great
bye.
talking to you. Thank you.